You're listening to It's a Wonderful Life with Tom Rohr. From Rogers to Bedford Falls, from Fayetteville to Pottersville, we're discovering how one person's life can make an effect on so many others. Our guest today is Kent Eikenberry. Welcome, Kent.
Hey, Tom. How's it going?
Good, good. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
Well, we always start out the show having you talk about yourself a little bit and your family. Where'd you grow up?
Well, both Diane and I were coincidentally born at the same hospital in Independence, Kansas, a few months apart. I was born in November of 1954 in Independence, Kansas. Grew up on a farm south of a small town called Cherryvale, Kansas. Moved to Leota when I was 11. Leota is out in the middle of the Great American Desert, about 60 miles northwest of Garden City, Kansas, and lived there until I went to college at Kansas State. And shortly after that, my parents moved, and I never really saw a reason to go back to western Kansas, so we haven't gone there.
So you grew up in southeastern Kansas. You moved to western
yes.
Kansas.
Uh-huh.
Now, what took your parents out there?
My dad tried to farm on his own, did not make a lot of money. We didn't know we didn't have a lot of money. We raised all of our own cattle and our chickens and our hogs and had a big garden, and relatives, aunts, uncles lived close. And so we all raised gardens together and canned vegetables together, and we always had a lot to eat. And Mom sewed and my aunts sewed, so we all had plenty of clothes to wear, and we just didn't have much cash to work with. So I guess you could say we were like most everybody else.
I grew up out in western Kansas. People often ask, how did you live in a place like that was so desolate? And I think just like you said, we didn't know any better. That's really all that we knew.
My uncle Kenneth had moved to the small town Leota a few years before, and Dad finally decided that he just wasn't making any progress, so he sold out the farm, sold everything, and moved to Leota and started working for a guy putting on anhydrous ammonia. I think he changed jobs shortly after that and was the farm manager for a man who had, thousands of acres of crops and had his own feedlot and had a pinto bean processing plant. So that was not my first job. My first job was when I was 12 years old, and I went to work for a neighbor who rebuilt steam engines, steam tractors. And
were they still using steam tractors at that point? Or was it like a museum?
Yeah, it was for like just shows, music. But he did. He would build them to where they would work, and I would go in. And he was also a case implement dealer, and I would go in on Saturdays and I would sweep the floors. And then at one point, I got promoted to cleaning parts with solvent. That was my first job when I was 12 years old.
Only young people do that job. You never see any old people cleaning things with solvent. Now, you mentioned you went to K-State, and then you said that your parents moved from Leota. Was that at the same time? Or?
No, I think Dad worked. Mom and Dad lived in Leota, and Dad retired when he was 65. And that would have been in 1985. So I left to go to college in 1972, and then I graduated in 77. I did the 5-year plan in order to. Nobody ever said you had to go to class. They just said you had to pay the check. But going to class would have been much better for my grade point average. We went back to Leota and would visit the folks, and then when Dad retired, they moved back to Cherryvale, which was their home. At the time, Diane and I were living in Independence, and we had two of the 3 boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, did you meet Diana at Cherryville, or did you meet her at Manhattan?
Diane and I met at the Kansas State Farm Bureau Citizenship Seminar and outside Council Grove, Kansas.
That sounds like that's just burnt into your mind. Remember seeing that lovely lady at that point.
It was one of my better moves, better decisions.
Okay.
So,
all right. So what brought you to Northwest Arkansas?
It was the newspaper at the time. I was working for the Independence, Kansas, the Independence Daily Reporter, and a guy by the name of Okie Boyd was the publisher of the Northwest Arkansas Morning News, published out of Rogers, and he recruited me to come down here and be his ad guy. The concept was I would come to Northwest Arkansas, work for a couple of years, learn Don Ray's way of doing business, and then they would transfer me and I would have my own newspaper. Well, they were true to their word. So 2 or 3 years after we got here, they said, we'd like for you to go to a small town in Texas and be a publisher. And I said, no, I don't think I want to live there. And they said, okay. And then they said, well, we think you would like to go to Iowa and be a publisher there. And we said, I don't think we want to do that either. All this time, the boys were getting older. We knew their friends. We knew their friends' parents. Diana was well established in the school system here. And we just weren't willing to give up the life, a wonderful life, in Rogers, Arkansas, to go someplace else and start over.
Okay. So were you working as a publisher here?
No, I was the director of advertising and marketing.
Okay. So did you go to school to be a publisher? And what does a publisher do?
My degree is actually in journalism. And when people think of journalists, they think of people who write. I happen to be, while my degree is in journalist, I'm a business person who worked at a newspaper. And that's what the publishers do. That's their job, is to control expenses, to generate revenue. Because newspapers are a business just like Walmart's a business. Okay. And if they don't sell enough or don't raise enough money, they can't write stories.
So it's almost like a general manager kind of position.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And then your role here at the newspaper was?
I was in charge of advertising and marketing.
Okay. And you did that for quite a few years.
30 years.
Wow.
Between the paper in Rogers, then when it merged with the paper in Springdale, and then when the Morning News, which was owned by Stevens, merged with the Democrat Gazette, which was owned by the Husband family, to form the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I stayed on for 7 or 8 years before I retired from the paper.
So in that position, what were your responsibilities?
Train salespeople, make sales presentations to advertisers, customers, help people grow their business, market the newspaper.
So as Northwest Arkansas has grown, you've really known a lot of people, and
it is one of the great things about my job is I was paid and encouraged to be involved in the community. That involvement has afforded me a wealth of opportunity to meet people, to be part of. I was on the startup for the board of directors for what was then the Poplar House, a mission by Mercy, well, at the time, St. Mary's Hospital, to give free medical care. I was on the foundation board for St. Mary's. Been on chamber boards in 3 of the 4 communities in Northwest Arkansas. Was one of the original members of the Community College Foundation Board. And then, of course, my favorite was after, of course, coaching Little League baseball and soccer and basketball and doing all those things in Boy Scouts. My true passion is where I ended up now, and that's feeding people. I was on the board of the food bank from 2008 through 2014. And, of course, starting January 1st of 2016, I made the career change from newspapers to trying to help those people who don't have enough to eat.
So tell us about that. What kind of things did you have to consider in making a change like that?
Tom, you know me well, and you know that I'm a very loyal person, and it was very difficult for me to resign from the newspaper. It was very difficult for me to leave because it had been such an integral part of my life for the past 30 years. But, I just, for several years before, not several, I would say a couple years before then, I just had this nagging feeling that God was calling me to do something different. So one day I was having lunch with Marge Wolf, who was my predecessor, and I said, Marge, I think I don't want you to retire yet. I'm not trying to run you off, but I think God wants me to take your job when you retire. And she kind of smiled and she said, well, I don't think that's such a strange idea, because I am planning on retiring at the first of the year and the board would like for you to take my place. So when she made her official resignation, I submitted my name, and about the day I was going to tell my boss at the newspaper that I was going to leave, she and I were close friends, and she called me into her office and she says, I just want you to know I resigned today. So back to the loyalty thing, I couldn't, in good conscience, both of us leave the newspaper.
It could be two levels of leadership.
Yeah. So I called the chairman of the board of the food bank and said, you know what, I rescind my application. I said, that's just, to me, it's God sending me a stop sign message. I went ahead and did her job for, 2 or 3 weeks, I guess, and really was not enjoying it. It was different than what I remembered it to be, and I remember Mike calling me and saying, are you sure that was a stop sign, not just a yield sign? Said, I think you're right. I think God gave me the opportunity to do that job for 2 or 3 weeks to prove to me that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I have never looked back. I have no regrets about the newspaper, and I have no regrets about leaving the newspaper. So I gave my notice on, early in November that I was going to leave at the first of the year. So I gave them about 6 or 7 or 8 weeks of notice, and then went to work for the food bank, went to work one day, and then went back to the newspaper the next day and did all the year-end stuff, and then went back to the food bank. But certain things happen when you're open to see them, and we've talked over the years. I struggle with actually listening to God speaking to us. But the day I gave notice, Nathan had posted something on Facebook, and it was about the Syrian refugees. He said, I never quote scripture. Matthew 25, whatever it is, says, for I was hungry and you fed me. And that was the day that I told the newspaper I was going to go feed people for the rest of my life.
It's pretty
and that was pretty reassuring that I had made the right decision.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank.
Before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the family. You ask about the decision, and the decision was not mine. It was a family decision. Diane and I talked about it. We prayed about it. We've made decisions together for the past 41 and a half years that we've been married. Actually made a few decisions before that together, but, I can't imagine going through this decision and this change without having her there, without having the boys, albeit they're grown and out of the house, but, they were 100% in support of me, and it's been a family calling. It really has been.
That's beautiful, Kent.
What's the food bank do? Best way to describe the food bank is that we are a wholesaler. There are 160 clients in Northwest Arkansas that are food pantries that get the food to service the 72,000 plus food insecure people in Northwest Arkansas.
So when you say Northwest Arkansas, what are the borders?
We have Benton, Carroll, Madison, and Washington counties.
So in 4 counties,
there
are 100 and did you say 172?
No, we have 160 agencies.
160 agencies.
So whether that's St. Vincent de Paul's Food Pantry or the Disciples of Christ Christian Churches Food Pantry, or the Salvation Army, the Samaritan Center. These guys all get about 80 to 90% of their food from us.
And they serve a population of how many people?
There's over 72,000 who are food insecure.
Wow.
Feeding America and the U.S. Department of Agriculture defines someone as being food insecure as not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. Now, that doesn't mean, gosh, Tom, where are we going to have lunch? It means, gosh, Tom, are we going to be able to have lunch at all?
Wow. Now, what percentage of the population is that?
It's 1 in 7.
Wow.
And then kids under 18, that percentage increases to 1 in 4. 25% of the kids going to school in those 4 counties don't have enough food to have a meal every day at home.
You know, and when we're driving around Northwest Arkansas, it is such a beautiful place, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's just so many good things that are going on here. You don't get the sense that there would be that many people out there that would be food insecure.
Mm-hmm. You're right. But I can take you right now and get in the car within 5 minutes, have you at houses that don't have electricity, or show you families who are living out of their car. But, you know, in Northwest Arkansas, food insecurity is not necessarily the homeless person. It's not the guy standing out at the interstate with a sign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 60% of those people who are going to food pantries are working at least one job, or they're disabled, or they're a senior citizen. You know, I share a story, and you know, I guess it's okay because he's deceased, so, you know, God rest it. But a friend of mine and I were talking one day at the St. Vincent Food Pantry, and he looked at me, and he was obviously embarrassed that he was there because he retired as a fireman, so he had a fireman's pension. He had a tree service business, so he was a good businessman. And so we were talking, and he says, you know, Kent, my wife got sick. I had to spend a bunch of money on medical bills. My grandkids are coming to stay with me because of whatever reason. And I don't have any money to buy them food. We're all that close through any number of circumstances. Somebody could be in a food pantry and need food. You know, I had a guy that worked for me that didn't come to work one day. And I said, you know, Matt, why didn't you come to work? I said, well, my battery was down on my truck. And I said, you do realize that you just left $100 on the table. And he didn't grasp that concept that he could have called somebody to go to work. So there's that struggle, and there's people who are going to food pantries. They're not freeloaders. They're not trying to scam the system. They're good old Joes, and that, you know, are giving it their best shot and maybe haven't made the best decisions, but
and they just struggle. And it sounds like you get to know them also.
Most of the people that I come in contact with is when I work at the food pantry.
Okay.
You know, Diane and I still volunteer at least once a month at St. Vincent, and I think it's important for me to do my job to have that interaction with the end client.
Mm-hmm. To meet them face to face.
Uh-huh. Because if I understand their needs, then I can adjust what we do.
Well, how big a facility is the food bank, and how many people work there?
We're roughly 30,000 square feet. We've got in the neighborhood of 700,000 to 800,000 pounds of food.
Wow.
In our warehouse.
At any one time, you've got that much in there.
Yeah, which sounds like a lot, but it's about 3 weeks worth of product.
Wow.
If nothing else came in the door, we would turn that in between 3 and 4 weeks.
Okay.
And it's a business. I think I've got 21 or 22 full-time people and a couple of part people.
Wow. What are some of the jobs down at the food bank?
We've got the guys who say they're the guys that do all the work. We have 4 trucks running 5 days a week who are going to retail stores and rescuing product that can't be sold but is still consumable by humans. So we've got the drivers, we've got the guys that work in the warehouse who pull the orders, stack the orders, get everything ready for our partner pantries to come in. And then we've got the office dwellers. I've got a director of development. I've got a director of client services. Her job is to recognize what we need to do to help the people who we serve. How do we need to adjust the way we do business? Of course, we have a guy who we spend about $1 million a year on food. So I have a guy who buys food. I've got, a couple of a guy that works in marketing and development also. So,
So do you buy all the food, or
no?
Where does the food come from?
Like I say, we buy about $1 million of food a year. We get corporate donations from some of the local companies. Tyson is a great partner. They give us a semi-load of protein every week that we work with. Kraft Heinz is a big partner. General Mills is a big partner. And then we do about 5 million pounds of what we call retail rescue. And that's if a box of Cheerios is damaged on the outside, but the bag is still intact. Well, the stores will pull that off the shelf because the consumer doesn't want to buy that. So they put that back, and then we take it and we make sure the integrity of the food is still good, and we'll distribute it to our food pantries. We'll get a lot of produce that has 2 or 3 days shelf life left on it. It may be bruised a little bit. They don't want to sell it. They'll pull it off. And so we do, like I say, over 5 million pounds of that a year that would end up in the landfill if we weren't.
So tell us a little bit about the pantries that you serve.
The pantries range from a closet in a church that are open a couple hours a week to someplace like the Samaritan Center is open 5 days a week and has not only food available but have counseling and some medical services and those types of things. And they run the gamut. They're all different kinds. We have the Northwest Arkansas Children's Shelter is one of our partners. They get a lot of their food from us. Seven Hills Homeless gets food from us. And it's just, we are, while there's a lot of need, and it shocks me that there is as much need as there is, we're blessed to have the support to get people who actually care about other folks in Northwest Arkansas. And we just, we find somebody who's going to be the avenue to be that outlet, and we try to be the conduit of getting the food from where it is to where it needs to be.
Do you have volunteers?
We do. We average about, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,200 volunteers in December alone. And probably an average month is 5,000 or 6,000 hours of volunteer time.
Wow.
Those volunteers are doing anything from putting labels on what we call brights, which are cans that don't have labels on them.
Just a mystery of what's in there.
Well, no, there's a code on top of the can. And so you look at the code, you look it up, and in order for us to distribute it, you have to have the nutritional value on it. So we print the labels and we put the labels on it, and then we can distribute it. Or we get this retail rescue that we talked about, and a box may have some Cheerios and green beans and all kinds of stuff. So we'll sort those. We have a couple of programs that we work on our own. Is a senior mobile pantry where we go to 8 different locations in Northwest Arkansas and distribute food to seniors. We have a group of volunteers that come in and pack those boxes. We have an agreement with most of the area law enforcement agencies. So we have a group that'll come in and pack those boxes. And it's an emergency box of food that the cops carry in the back of their car. And if they find somebody that obviously food is an issue with them, they give them that box of food. Our goal is...
If you had a group that, like at Walmart, they have the volunteer always pays, you welcome groups like that.
Oh, absolutely. We've had groups as large as, 150. They're a challenge for us, but we can handle that many. Adults, we've had Stella's Girl Scout troop in there, so we've had little girls in there. The days that we had the little girls, they marked out the barcodes on the bread.
So there's always things that you can assign work for all kinds of. So now, do you have any food drives or fundraisers?
Our food drives are going on constantly. We have a lot of businesses that have food drives. We enjoy food drives. Food drives are the core of how food banking got started. But at the risk of sounding greedy, we work with Feeding America. And if you take our partnership in Feeding America and our local donors and our national donors, and if you put all that stuff together, I can provide 11 meals for every $1 that's donated to me. So wow. Cash is actually king. But I also understand that cash does not make you as a donor feel as good as a jar of peanut butter. Yeah. So yeah, food drives are still critical.
And it's probably good for your soul to come down and see the operation and maybe run into somebody that benefits from from.
Sure.
That's very good. So if I'm someone listening here, how would I get involved, or what would be the best way to get involved?
We have 2 ways. Certainly as a volunteer, we do take individuals. You can call 479-872-8774 and say that you want to volunteer. You can go to nwafoodbank.org and click on the tag that says volunteer, and that'll get you set up. Equally as important is just recognizing that there is a need in Northwest Arkansas. You said it earlier that you drive around this area and you don't think there's people who need our services.
You just don't see them. They're invisible.
Hunger is a faceless thing. I would say that you worked with guys who were food insecure. I know I did at the newspaper. And had no idea. But, when you figure, let's say, a lot of folks in Northwest Arkansas make $10 or $11 or $12 an hour. Well, $10 an hour is less than $21,000 a year. It's tough to make a go on that. It's referred to as a face issue.
Very inspiring. Are you ready to go to the lightning round? This is the part of the show where we get to know a little bit about you.
Well, as a fellow Western Kansaner, we didn't have a lot of lightning where we grew up.
Well, this ought to be really special then, huh?
And when you did, you knew it was time to go to the house.
All right.
Especially if it was coming out of the east.
That's right. That's right. You could be going up like Dorothy's house.
All right, let's
First
try.
Question.
Okay.
What inspires you, Kent?
Trying to do what God wants all of us to do, and that's to help each other.
like you said earlier, that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd like to say I would still be in this position had I not gone through Cursillo, but I think Cursillo changed the way I looked at life.
So what's Cursillo?
It's a small 3-day course on how to better live your faith life.
Okay.
I think Diana would attest that was a time in my life where I started going from not really an angry person, but I became a much more patient person. I think I'm much more patient.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, but I also went through a period now that I want to, we've been so blessed with so much things in our life. Haven't touched as many people as George did, but, I think if Clarence came down and was trying to talk me out of committing suicide, I think we would have.
You might listen to him.
I think we would have a similar conversation.
You'd help him get his wings.
Yeah, I would try.
I love it. All right. Okay, so what would we find you doing when you're not working at the food bank?
I would hope that you would find me on the golf course.
Okay.
More than likely, you would find me. I do enjoy yard work. So I might be working in my yard. I more than likely would be between here and Fayetteville, hanging out with Stella and Hattie and Ben and Arthur.
How many grandkids do you have?
4.
That'll keep you busy.
They will.
And you'll have to make golfers out of them too.
Stella did first tee this year. She enjoys it. Of course, Tyler is an avid golfer, and so
there's potential there.
There's a chance that golf will continue to be part of our lives.
All right. Last question. What was the last gift you gave someone?
The cheesy answer is I think every day I give a gift to myself.
Okay, you got to do better than that.
I know. I was kind of hoping to slide that through. Well, let's see. I gave Diana for Christmas, I think was the last time we gave anybody any gifts. And she got a rangefinder so that she could tell how far she hit the golf ball.
Oh, okay.
And then I
thought maybe she had picked up fishing or something.
No. We enjoy Christmas. We enjoy sharing gifts with the family.
Right.
But
and she's probably somebody who's a golf partner for you pretty regularly too.
She is.
Okay. Well, Kent, we appreciate you talking to us today and opening up. We love what you're doing, and we appreciate the service that you offer for the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to It's a Wonderful Life. And remember, the only things that you can take with you is that which you give away. This is Tom Rohr, the richest man in town, signing off till next time.
You're listening to the Padua Podcast Network, PaduaMedia.com.